Charlie Angus is garbage. I don't care to engage in the logic of Charlie Angus or look into the nuances of how he comes to the conclusions he does. Charlie Angus is just a human piece of garbage because after the death of Sheila Lewis, the woman who had been denied an organ transplant for more than a year because she wouldn't get the COVID-19 vaccine, for some reason, Charlie Angus thinks this is an amazing opportunity to both mock the woman and then try and go after Pierre Poilievre for saying that Roman Baber was doing the right thing by standing up for the dignity of Sheila Lewis. Like Charlie Angus is one of those progressives who thinks that he's so much more tolerant than the average person. Like, condolences to anyone who lives in Charlie Angus's riding. You deserve far better than him. But this is what he put out on Twitter yesterday. He said, a woman died because she preferred to fight for disinformation and anti-vax BS and conspiracy. Pierre Poilievre says she's a hero and supports a candidate so bogus that Doug Ford kicked him out. Now, we can all disagree on vaccine issues, but Sheila Lewis is a hero. Sheila Lewis actually stood up for what she believed in the face of arbitrary regulations put in front of her by Canadian medical boards and judges and stuck it out. And while maybe not everyone would have made her choice, she deeply believed what she did and she stood up for it. But Charlie Angus thinks her conviction is somehow mock-worthy and that she's just someone fighting for disinformation and other sort of conspiracy theories. That's utter garbage. And it's coming from a man who has no principle and has never had basically a real job in his entire life. Charlie Angus is a glorified HOA board trustee who's never left in his life. He is no one that anyone should care anything about, but he just turned into a political troll and the NDP's version of Mark Garrettson. And this doesn't just stop at Charlie Angus, who, again, I'm not going to even consider anything else he says other than because he is garbage. I don't care about anything that Charlie Angus has to say, but this is something that for some reason the entire tolerant progressive left thinks is a great thing to jump on. I had this exchange with this Alberta Party shill, Steve Ricketts, on Twitter, where he says, I thought the right was all about personal responsibility and personal choice in response to Sheila Lewis dying. And you can read the rest of that Twitter exchange on the screen right now. And it's like, personal choice? How is this a personal responsibility thing that she died because the Canadian medical regulatory system got in her way? Effectively, the liberal regulatory system killed this woman, and now that's supposed to be a personal choice. That's how the left doesn't even understand what personal choice is. They think personal choice is that you making choices and then anyone being able to do whatever else they want to you in response to your choices. This is where the left thinks that, well, you can say whatever you want, but it's your responsibility if I then kick the crap out of you for disagreeing with you. That's their idea of what choice is, that if you do not get the COVID-19 vaccine, that it's entirely above board for the Canadian medical system to just basically say, yeah, you didn't need the COVID-19 vaccine to make this a successful surgery. You didn't need it to be able to recover properly, but whatever, we're just going to kill you effectively because you would not comply with some nonsense arbitrary barrier that we put in your way. And even what I find also really disgusting about the way that the legacy media is covering this is just the way that they're headlining the story to try and put the blame on Sheila Lewis for her death. This is what the Global News put out, which is usually the bottom of the barrel. So I didn't decide to really dig much deeper or grab any other screenshots because they sort of took the cake right away. They said, Alberta woman who was denied organ transplant after refusing COVID vaccine dies. That is such a disgusting framing of what actually happened. She wasn't denied it because she refused to get the COVID-19 vaccine. She was denied healthcare because of arbitrary rules. And while some may say, well, she could have just gotten the vaccine and then she could have gotten the organ transplant, she could have done that. And if she made the right choices, she would still be alive today. That's not the point. You do not put in arbitrary regulations in place and expect, well, if someone does all the right things, that they'll get the organ transplant at the end of the day. If you put in arbitrary barriers in the way of people, you're going to find that certain people are unwilling on principle to go through those barriers. And just because the barrier won't stop you doesn't mean it's not an illegitimate barrier. And the other sort of thing, the other sort of thing I can't stand is the schmarmy way people talk about this very tragic situation as if it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, you just didn't think it through enough. Like Max Fawcett saying conservatives calling doctors glorified plumbers and then suggesting they shouldn't be making the decisions about organ transplants says it all. Really, well, the implication being, well, if you don't think that they should have been able to deny Sheila Lewis her organ transplant, are you saying that that doctors shouldn't be able to make any decisions for themselves or any medical decisions? No, Max, shut up. Everyone understands that the doctor should be able to make some decisions and be able to, like, bar someone who's an alcoholic who refuses to get to actually recover from getting like a liver transplant. Obviously, everyone understands something like that, but stop using this kind of dumb, like cherry picking way of viewing the world in order to pretend that this woman's death wasn't eminently preventable by not having stupid regulations on the book. Just be like, and like, oh well, are you saying that doctors should be able to make decisions? Obviously no. Shut up. Obviously no. People just don't want people dying because they didn't jump through an arbitrary hoop. And you can say, well, it's an easy arbitrary hoop to jump through. Shut up. We shouldn't have arbitrary hoops to begin with. This is what is so disgusting about the progressive left these days, is this just kind of like this kind of whining whenever you don't use like the pronouns they like, or you don't comply with dumb sort of speech regulations they use in their institutions and whatnot. That becomes a riot. If you don't do something that doesn't even affect anyone else, that doesn't actually hurt anyone else if you refuse to comply. But when someone that makes a choice for themselves, that effectively doesn't really matter, especially these days. It's 2023. Who cares if someone's vaccinated or not? When someone makes that decision for themselves, well, now it's fine for the entire system to collude against that person to make sure that they die early because they wouldn't do something that wouldn't have affected the outcome of the surgery she was seeking. It's stupid. Like, I know some people will point out, well, like sometimes if you go through procedures like this, your immune system falls a lot, so they want to make sure that you do things so that you're healthy. Obviously, COVID's not nearly as big a factor these days. And if we're going by that logic, that if you've missed any vaccines in your life, if you're not entirely 100% healthy, everyone would get denied. Everyone would get denied a surgery outside of like Olympic athletes. It's stupid. But anyways, I think that conservatives really need to make the left sort of face this kind of position they've taken and really drive it home how intolerant the supposedly tolerant left is. These people do not care about the lives of Canadians. They just care about the ability to control institutions in Canada. That's where like Steve Ricketts is a perfect example. He thinks it's normal, like personal choice, or it's just personal choice at the end of the day for the medical system to just deny someone like an organ transplant that they need to live. Like Sheila Lewis, even though you don't have to agree with everything she believes or every decision she makes, but she absolutely is a hero, and she stood up for Canadian constitutional rights. And too bad the system got in her way and prevented her from being able to get the medical treatments that she deserved. Anyways, that's it for today. I have my link to my legal fundraiser in the link below, my Give, Send, Go. I'm being sued by a Chinese billionaire. I already paid $15,000 into defending myself. I also have the TNT email list down there. You could sign up to get the National Telegraph's content straight to your email box. But that's it for me. This really ticked me off.